Am I up?
رضا جان خوش آمدی. As the tradition has it, we switch to English so that our people over here may not be that current in Persian.
Thank you.
It's great to have you here. I've prepared this short introduction to get us going into the mood, and I need my glasses to get there. Behzad Haqqou has had a meteoric success at an unusually early age in making his mark in Silicon Valley. Behzad is 25 years old, yet he has already fulfilled the dream that many of you hope to realize much later in your life. Behzad has already developed and productized a novel and practical collaborative coding software and sold it to Roblox. Tonight, we have the opportunity to meet this young and brilliant scientist and entrepreneur and pick his brain about his goals and his visions of the future of computer science and AI. So to start with, Behzad, I want you to tell us about your early age, your high school. Where did you grow up, and how did you become interested in computer science and coding?
Yeah, thanks for the kind intro. Glad to be here. So I grew up in Tehran. I always liked building things that do things. So generally, this idea that you can build something and then people use it, and it becomes a trivial part of life. They can't live without it. That was very fascinating to me, and I was very curious, how can I be a part of that? And I was mostly interested in mechanical stuff. So in high school, for example, I spent a few years building an Arduino cone, like a pomegranate decider. But as I grew up, later, it became more and more abstract. Of instead of just thinking about mechanical stuff that you can touch, more digital things, basically anything that solves some problem through technology became interesting. And yeah, so then it became more and more
How
towards
did you
coding.
become an engineer at an early age? Was it in the influence of someone, your parents?
I think maybe to some level. So my dad's job is basically they make production lines for cars. So that kind of helped me see what's entrepreneurial lifestyle, or building a product that then leads to something that people use. So for example, I remember seeing so when I was a kid, I had a very small part in designing some cars production line in Iran. So there's this thing that holds the car, moves it through the production line. I helped very insignificantly in that.
How old were
But
you then?
10 or so.
Oh, wow.
And then every time I saw one of those cars, I was like, wow, I made this happen. That's so fascinating. And seeing that journey, I think that was very helpful. But then in middle school, I used to keep asking my teachers, how can I have this idea? How can I make a company? And how can I sell it to people? And the first week of middle school, I was like, oh, I made this vacuum cleaner. How can I get to mass production or something like that? And then those teachers kind of guided me a little bit. And one thing I learned was it's better to focus on problems that I can add some meaningful contribution to, rather than necessarily the world's biggest problems. So instead of learning about Mars rovers, let's work on de-seeding pomegranates or something. That's something that as a young person I can have some impact on. And I think to this day, that's one of my proxies or heuristics for finding what problem to work on. Basically, what's the expected value of me meaningfully changing that versus necessarily whether that's the biggest problem or not.
Yeah. You said de-seeding pomegranates.
Yeah.
What was that about?
Yeah, so I was I don't know, 10 years, no, 12 years old. And I was like, what's a problem I can solve that I can really push forward? And I looked around and seeding pomegranates is hard, as you all know. And my mom, I think, also has an allergy that's when she sees pomegranates, her skin gets rashes or something. So I was like, yeah, let's make this easier. And then we spent 2 years prototyping different versions. So it went from something this big to something this big. And it was very interesting to really focus on something very simple and try to see where can you innovate? What are the actual constraints? What are the things that can change? And simplifying it. That was very interesting. But it never got to mass production, but it was interesting nevertheless.
Do you remember when you got your first computer, your own computer, and what was it?
Uh, no, I think since I remember there were computers. Like I think when I was like 3 or 4, we had a like Windows 95 computer or 98, I
Uh-huh.
think. Yeah, but I think like I didn't know programming and stuff until like much later, until like middle school.
I see.
Yeah. Um,
You took an unusual path post high
mhm,
school.
yeah.
You placed, you took Iran's concours and you placed at Sharif University where everybody wants to be, double E major over there. But you ended up at Stanford.
Yeah.
You didn't, you did your undergraduate at Stanford. Why?
Yeah. So I think so. I always wondered, like, so I saw people going for like grad school outside Iran, but I always wonder why don't they go earlier a little bit.
Uh-huh.
And when I was in high school, we used to watch these like MIT has these open courseware courses. I don't know if you've seen it or not, but like we
Yes.
used to watch their physics courses and stuff. And I was like, it would be so cool to be a part of that. And then a little bit later, I realized there's such a startup culture in Stanford, and like also like all the projects they do with industry. For example, I liked cars, and there was this collaboration with Volkswagen building self-driving cars at Stanford. I was like, it will be like a very cool learning experience to be a part of these. And so I started looking around to see how can I do this, and no one knew anything. Like I emailed everyone, every Iranian I could find at Stanford and MIT, like when I was in high school, and everyone was like, yeah, it's cool if you come earlier, but we don't know how. And finally, like towards like very close to coming here, I found someone who was applying also, and we figured a lot of things together.
Mhm.
And basically, till the last minute, I didn't know if it's possible or not, but I thought it's worth a shot. And as you said, I also took the concours if in case like this doesn't work.
Yeah.
But yeah, it ended up working, and I think worked out pretty well. Yeah.
And why did you pick Stanford versus MIT? I'm glad you did that, but
Yeah.
why did you pick that?
Actually, I didn't have a choice. I applied to 4 places. I
Uh-huh.
only got into Stanford. I applied to Harvard, MIT, Caltech, and Stanford.
Mhm.
And yeah, I ended up here. But I always liked Silicon Valley. Like Dr. Tabish actually had a PDF about like how like people start companies here, stories of a lot of Iranians who started companies. And I was like, Stanford is the place to be. But I always thought it's harder than the other ones to get into. But it kind of worked in a weird, like I got into this, but not the other ones.
So
Yeah.
that PDF that Dr. Tabish has composed, put together, has actually helped you.
Yeah, that was a pivotal moment. Like before that, I was very like doubtful whether I want to be a scientist or more like a technologist, and I thought like it takes generations to build a large company. But then I read that, then I realized, oh, there is this thing called venture capital. Then like people pitch, then like a lot of these companies go from like zero to like meaningful impact in like 10 years, and like it was very encouraging. And also like before that, I didn't know you can start hardware companies. I thought like software you can bootstrap it or something, but I saw no, you can do very ambitious things, large companies, and like that PDF. Then after that, I looked for more examples. Like I read about Elon, like all these people, and like that was very like inspiring and like kind of showed it can be done. Yeah.
Fascinating. How many here do know about this PDF that is online actually? It's both at our site. Just one,
Uh,
two, three, four, five. It is a fascinating book. You have to read it. It's history, education, technical, all wrapped in one. And it's in Persian. I really encourage you to. And it's on Persian Tech Network as well, right? I think they have put it there. So that I'm so glad that that really helped you because that's one of my favorite publications. I read that, but
Yeah.
after I experienced everything. Um, Tell me about your undergraduate work at Stanford. What was the highlight? What did you learn? And how did it shape your entrepreneurial spirit?
So uh, I think like since the beginning I came here, I was like, I want to start a company. How does that work?
You
And
had
like
that itch.
yeah, like I remember like actually I think last year, like the person who picked me up from airport told me like the first thing I asked was like, so how do you start a company on a student visa? So like that was the attitude. And then like very early on, I found like someone in my dorm who was also like who also had that itch, and we started like thinking a lot about a lot of ideas. But I thought like I wanted to do something like at the edge of technology, like basically technologies that just became feasible and now we want to productize them. So I looked for a lot of labs that were like doing this type of applied research, and so I started doing research on those. So like actually before coming here, I was doing some healthcare stuff. Like I tried building a startup in Iran. That didn't work, but that kind of paved the way for doing like AI healthcare research here. And we've worked on like radiology, like helping like building AI models that diagnose diseases, things like that. And generally, I think one thing that was very interesting at Stanford was industry, like and applications and research are very close. So you like see this like very real time collaboration, and I think that was very interesting to see like what does it take for an idea to go from a lab into a company, and like how is that process. I think those were very helpful. And the other part was like Silicon Valley is very interconnected. I didn't know this before coming here. Like I remember like when I came here, someone told me like network your way in a way that everyone is either you know people or you know someone who knows them. And I thought like that's like impossible. But that really is how it is. Like everyone like is super connected and super helpful. So like whenever you have a question, like you can find a way to ask the person who's the like most expert in that field. Like for example, we were working on something and it was related to marketing, and like we were looking at the travel industry. We asked a few people at Stanford, and then we got connected to someone who was on the board of booking.com, and he had like been in this industry for years, and like they're willing to help you, and that's very interesting. Like there's a basically people are very, very helpful in Silicon Valley. And I think that was also one thing. And throughout like my undergrad, I basically did these two things. I did research to see like what's the edge of deep learning and AI, and also like building products, giving them to people. And most of them didn't work. Like we would like walk in Palo Alto, pitch every restaurant. None of them wanted what we were building. Then do the next thing, next thing, next thing. And yeah, so this process. And finally, like towards the end, we came up with ideas that made more sense. And also like a lot of times we made the mistake. Like for example, we thought this idea is useless. Like we built something, we showed it to 60 companies, they said it's bad. Then someone else did it, then everyone loved it. So like learning through all these of like, how do you measure whether something is a good idea, a bad idea? I think it was a good experience for trying these and learning from it.
And while you were an undergraduate at Stanford, you mainly worked a lot at SAIL, Stanford Artificial Intelligence. Any particular professor over there was your guru, your guide, your mentor? You want to mention a couple?
I worked with a lot of people. I think for most of my research was with Andrew Ng and Chelsea Finn. And I learned a lot from them academically and like working on these projects. But there were also a lot of other professors that I would just reach out to them, talk to them, learn from them. Like there's like Debbie Saneski, I think in Aero Astro. Like for example, she told me like very early on that like instead of like going deep in one field, just learn to solve any problem. Like if you want to be an entrepreneur, you need to be able to tackle any problem and figure it out. And like things like that also like helped. So not just like the professors I researched with, but yeah.
Just the general area and the spirit that you
capture.
So after your undergraduate, you continued to get your MS at Stanford, but pretty soon your focus changed from the courses that you were taking at Stanford to the software collaboration code. And based on that, you were less and less involved with Stanford and more involved with the company that you had. Tell us, how was that switch? How did that switch happen?
Yeah, so towards the end of my undergrad, like basically the last month of my undergrad, I started toying with this idea of like having a better collaboration system for coding. Basically, today people use Git, which is this framework for version control and collaboration. And we felt like basically once in a while I would complain to my friend about it, the same friend that I met the first year. And like we would discuss it. And after a while, we realized there's this fundamental problem with Git, which is not real time. Like you can't collaborate and like have information synced instantly. And then like we started building prototypes. It got a little bit serious, and we were like, okay, let's spend a month on this after Stanford. Like instead, like we had a summer that was free, and we were like, instead of like doing an internship or something else, let's just build this summer. And gradually, it became more and more serious. And I think I already had a like job lined up. Like I wanted to do my undergrad, then like work a little bit, then go back to masters.
Mhm.
And I ended up just saying like, I won't do the job. Let's just start this as a company.
Mm.
And a lot of it was like through our previous experiences, we'd learned like how to de-risk an idea, how to validate it, and we felt like it's worth like spending a year on it. Every time it was like that. Like it's worth spending a week, then a month, 3 months, a year, and then we started a company based on it. Yeah.
And your code collaboration idea was the gist of
Yeah.
the company that you built. Uh, what problem does it solve in addition to what you already said
Yeah.
about just syncing much better?
Yeah. So the general like context is like this was right after COVID, so people are working remotely. They're coding like most people code like in companies, and they want to collaborate together. And we felt there is a lot of friction in this process, and it's not just a collection of random problems. It's like a fundamental thing that's missing, which is the real-time collaboration. And we felt if you solve this, you can build a much better coding experience.
Mhm.
Then when you do that, it's not just about collaboration. You can add like, I don't know, AI for like generating the code. You can do so many things on top of this synced
Gotcha, yeah.
layer. And it's basically like going from one person coding to everyone coding together in the same place, similar to Figma, similar to Google Docs, which is also a little bit funny because like programmers made all those tools for other like people to collaborate, but they are using the worst tool, which is like very asynchronous. And yeah, and so like we started working on it, but we wanted to start with a very simple, like basically a beachhead use case, as they call it, a very, very narrow use case at first, and then expanding from that. And what we were working on was live collaboration. So at the time, people were like sharing their screen, showing other people, I'm working on this, help me debug it. We wanted to build something more like Google Docs that you can just work together at the same time.
Transparently
Yeah,
happens in the background.
yeah, exactly.
So you did the transition from being a student to an entrepreneur, from being an academic person to somebody in a company dealing with funding and schedules and all that. How was it for you? What were the challenges of doing that transition?
I think there were two challenges. One was student to like a founder, as you said. The other one was student to like just an adult, like not like living on my own, like things like that.
Mhm.
And I think basically both of them were kind of challenging. Like when you're a student, you only worry about like, okay, I'm studying right now, then I'm doing this. Stanford feeds you, they give you housing, everything. So I think that was one background challenge. But as a founder, I think generally it was pretty fine. Like I think because of those smaller experiences that we had with those like shorter term projects,
Mhm.
I had some idea of what it's gonna look like. But the biggest challenge was context switching. Like if you're like a CEO of a company, you're constantly going from like a product meeting to coding to convincing investors to going like there's so much context switching. But after a while, I think it starts to be more reasonable. Yeah.
And how about getting investments, fundraising? How did that go? Because I imagine if you're a student with an idea and you go to the sources of fund, you're not going to be very successful. What made you different?
Uh,
And how did you navigate that problem?
Yeah, so we started with some investors that we kind of had known through Stanford.
Mhm.
So in my earlier years, for every idea we had, we would go talk to some investors, and they kind of knew we had this itch for entrepreneurship and building a company. I think that helps a little bit, like not just meeting someone in 20 minutes is less like helpful than that. But overall, I think there is this culture that people are like Stanford students are smart, or like generally any technical student, and they want to fund it, and they're worried more about missing an investment than
Mm.
like losing money on an investment. So they rather like take you. And also depends what like the way you talk about your product, the way you like pitch it. But also like a lot of the stereotypes are not true. For example, we didn't have a pitch deck. Our whole thing was like we just had one image, and we were like, this is the problem, do you fund us or not? And we also didn't have a super clear idea. We were like, we know there is something in code collaboration, these are our hypotheses, and we think this is the way we want to approach it. And like basically they really like seeing clear questions and what you're going to do about them.
Mm.
But whether you have the answer or not, I think they know you can figure it out. And also a lot of times companies totally change in the first like year or two, so that matters less. Yeah.
Could I paraphrase what you said about raising funds by saying that you built a relationship with the investors over several, a period of time, short time,
Yeah.
a year, rather than just going to them and wanting the funding?
Yeah, I mean, there were some that we just met and they were also willing to invest. So I think it depends, but overall, I think the earlier you build that relationship is better. And also it's better for the founders as well, because you're partnering with this investor for the next 10 years or so, and you want to know them. Like a pitch meeting is not enough for knowing someone. Yeah.
And then when you did the switching between from being a student to becoming an entrepreneur, a manager, a coder, what were the difficulties? I imagine, I mean, you alluded to the fact that being a student is a lot harder than doing your entrepreneur, or at least that's what I heard.
Okay.
Do you really mean that switching and becoming a company man at that early age was not a problem? Bigger than just taking tests?
I mean, there are challenges. There are also depends what stage of a company. We were a very early stage company, building a product every day, but there were challenges definitely. I think the biggest challenge is the uncertainty. Like other than context switching that I mentioned earlier, a lot of times you don't know what's the next step. Like I think people think in startups you're dying from work. I mean that also happens, but sometimes it's also like you don't know what's the next step. You don't know how to validate your idea, and dealing with that is also can also be hard. But overall, I think it was pretty good. We knew each other from before. We were a 3-person team. We had known each other through Stanford. We lived together. Like we kind of knew how we operate, and yeah, I think overall
so how
was
did
pretty
it happen?
fine.
You lived together first, and then you started a company, or started a company and decided to live together?
Yeah, we started a company, then decided to live together.
I see.
Yeah.
I see. Okay, close quarters.
Yeah.
We have a lot of aspiring entrepreneurs among here. In fact, a lot of people are here to hear that, you hear your story and learn from that. What advice would you give them about raising funds? What did you learn that would be useful for them?
I think generally, like take an action. Like instead of learning to raise a fund, then raising a fund, just go try it and see how it goes. And after a while, you develop this intuition of what does the investor care about? Like how do you present your work? And I think that's much more helpful than, and again, also helps build that relationship that you want. Also, timing matters a lot. We raised in 2021, which was a very good market for raising. I think now is also good for AI stuff. For other stuff is hard, but it's probably better than last year. But yeah, generally, I think putting yourself out there and talking to investors, that's the first step. And the other part is funding is not gonna do anything magical. It's not a validation of your idea. The investors are usually as clueless as you about whether this is a good idea or not. I mean, they've seen lots of companies, but no one can predict the future. And so just treat it as do we need money or not? And if we need money, let's raise it and run the company. But it's not a major milestone. But one thing is it takes a lot of time. So it can be a distraction, and timing it well is another thing that we learn. Yeah.
Now, you're working at Roblox. That's the company that bought your product.
Yeah.
You developed that product with your friends over a course of less than a year.
Yeah.
Which is very quick. And you had other takers, and Roblox was something you agreed with. Now you are a company man working at Roblox. How has that experience changed your outlook? What have you learned?
Yeah, it's a very different experience, I would say.
Awesome.
And one thing about me is I had done one internship, but I'd never worked as a product manager or as a software engineer in a company. So, and one of the reasons we sold was also that we wanted to experience this a bit. That was one plus. But it's very different. I think as a startup, we would go to the kitchen, we would decide what we were gonna do, we would ship very fast. I remember we added video calls to our product in one day. In a larger company, that's not the speed. But the cool part is the impact is much larger. we are now working on something that 3 million people are using. That's very cool. And also like learning how to communicate with people more effectively. I think that's very interesting. Like our whole team was 3 people, but seeing like how a large organization is managed, how do people coordinate things, that's very interesting. But I think overall, I'm more like on the startup side. I think at some point I'll go back, but now I'm very interested in like getting this product that we were building to the final impact. So like making Roblox collaborative, like bringing it to the 3 million users they have and things like that. Yeah.
Any obstacles, any surprises that you discovered after you went through Roblox?
Uh, Not much. I guess one thing was interesting. I think different companies have different cultures, but Roblox is very vision driven. And I think that's very interesting. I used to think like when companies get large, they probably rely a lot on experimentation and like A/B testing and things like that. And Roblox is more like long-term vision driven. They're like, we want to build this great thing for people to interact in the virtual world, and this is how we're going to do it. And it's kind of like Apple maybe in that sense. And seeing that up close is interesting. Like, how do they decide this is the vision? How do they carry it forward? How do they work backwards? Things like that.
Did you know this before you joined the company, or discovered it?
No, we discovered it after joining. Yeah.
Okay, and there were no surprises.
I mean, this was a surprise, I guess. Yeah,
I
but
see.
it wasn't a bad surprise. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
As a young entrepreneur, computer scientist, what do you see the trends in AI and machine learning and areas that you feel very passionate about, and maybe you target yourself after you get done with Roblox? What are those areas?
Yeah, so generally, I'm very interested in increasing productivity. Like you can either do that through collaboration or through like AI doing some part of your work. And the recent stuff with large language models, ChatGPT, like Stable Diffusion, those are very interesting in that area. But like apart from the technical stuff, one thing I'm very excited about these days is like people are much more optimistic about technology. Like a few years ago, the overall sentiment because of like the Cambridge Analytica, privacy, all these things was so negative. Now it's more like it's like kind of like space age. Like we're doing cool things. We're making AIs that think. So I think that's very positive overall, and also translates to people wanting to try new products, being more receptive to new technology. So that's very exciting. But in particular, I think I'm very excited about large language models. I think it's the first time computers have intuition, and like you can tell them what you want to do instead of you having to figure out how to use a computer to do what you want to do. And that's a new interface, new user interface. So I think there will be a lot of cool things coming out of it, but it's hard to predict exactly what. And I've been building some like side projects, seeing like what the limitations of this technology are, both at Roblox and outside Roblox. And it's very interesting. Like you can have agents that have some level of basic reasoning, but can do it at a very large scale. And that's like very interesting. It's kind of like how computers could do like simple math at a very large scale. Now you can have lots of like more like language operations. But predicting where it goes, I think is hard. But I think knowledge work will change a lot, definitely in the future.
How do you suggest people deal with their fears of the singularity point, the technology taking over, they being out of jobs, etc.? How do you suggest they would deal with it?
So for singularity stuff, I think once you look more deeply to the technology, you see like some of these fears don't make sense, some of them make sense. So like I think learning more about the details definitely helps. For example, like I mean, we can do a more like technical discussion, but it's very hard for me to see like the current architecture doing very good like planning and scientific thinking. I think you probably need reinforcement learning on top of it, or like some architectural change. So I think looking more deeply can help. But in terms of job changes, I think if singularity comes, then we really need to rethink a lot of things, like what humans are going to do. But before that, I think it will be more like job changes rather than job elimination. And it has been the same like past few hundred years. I think one thing that's happening, for example, I think software engineers now do more higher level work than like just typing everything themselves. And I think the same will happen for lawyers, for accountants, so like a lot of different jobs. But it's very similar to how PCs change things. Like you use Excel instead of like manually calculating everything and doing it by hand. So I think I wouldn't worry that much, but probably jobs will become a little bit more intellectual, and like the mundane parts will be removed to some level. Yeah.
So, for aspiring entrepreneurs and technologists, what do you suggest they should inculcate in themselves as qualities and characteristics and skills that ensure their success in the future?
I mean, I can say what I think is good. I
Sure.
don't know what is actually good.
We want your opinion.
Yeah. Then I think,
What should people learn? What should people focus on? Should they learn about finances? Should they learn about fundraising or just coding and people skill? Which one of these do you think
yeah.
is going to be helping them to become more successful entrepreneurs?
I think at the end of the day, you want to build something that people really want. Like that's the like YC advice. And anything other than that, I think is secondary. Like you can learn accounting later, you can learn how to raise a fund later. But if you have a product that people really want to use, that's what really matters. And getting there like is hard. Like there's no like obvious way of getting there, but I think whatever makes you get there faster. I think like one proxy might be like if someone is an expert in a field, like a doctor, or like someone who's like a lawyer or something, like someone who really knows a field can definitely see what are the issues that can be solved and like start from there. But generally you need to like find some insight that other people don't have and haven't solved it yet, and like try to solve that. And for us, for example, we were solving our own problem. We were like, code collaboration is hard, let's make it easier. It's not always like that. Sometimes you solve something in a different industry, but like generally you need a way of like seeing something before it's solved by other people. And there is this like quote that like future is here, but it's not like uniformly distributed. So I think trying to be on the edge of like what's coming, I think that's very helpful. For example, where I was in Andrew Ng's lab in Stanford, like we would see like that was one of the first times like AI was coming to medical diagnosis. And we were constantly talking to doctors in different hospitals and seeing like how do they react to it, what are their issues. And a lot of the discussions I heard there, like 4 years later, I would hear in like more like common settings. So I think it's important to try to be where the action is happening, like before it's like too late, basically. So I think that would help. And I think anyone who is expert in a certain field, I think that would be one source of that. And the other one would be like trying to find like where is like research happening, where is like a new trend happening, and trying to be like there. Yeah, so I think these are the things. And the other one is like finding a team can be hard, and like most startups like fail because of like bad like co-founder issues. But again, I think like I think Mark Andreessen has this quote that like if you have a good market and a bad like market always wins. If you have a good market, bad team, it wins. Good market, bad product, it wins. So if you find a problem that the market really cares about and you're solving it, I think the rest can be like figured out on the way.
You mentioned action and expertise and problems. Where do you find them? Do you think they're always in the industry, or academia has something to do with it? Do you see yourself ever to go back to the academia and be part of the research?
I think academia definitely has a part. There are companies that like Stanford famously really encourages like researchers to start companies. I think one issue with academia though is when you're doing research, you're not optimizing for what people want. You're trying to find new like discoveries, push the limits of research, and sometimes that becomes very useful as a product and you ship it. But I think going the other way of like, I want to start a company, so let's do research to find an idea, that's kind of inefficient. But overall, it's very exciting, and definitely, I think usually a lot of good products come out of like fairly cutting edge research, but it should be mature enough that it's reliable. So, for example, you can't have like right when like people are building ARPANET, you can't have Amazon. Like you need like this to be like distributed, some people using it, some level of maturity. But then there are other ones that are more like cutting. Like Google was more like, we found this new algorithm, let's make a company out of it. So I think it's very hard to know. But for me, it's like I'm most passionate about the creation process and like building a product that people use. And I think that's more interesting to me than academia. But I very closely like follow academia, like what's the latest in deep learning research or things like that. Yeah.
What are your long-term goals within the academy, or within the companies you want to build? Do you have any areas that you would like to direct your future ventures towards?
Uh,
What is your
yeah,
next move?
yeah, I think I'm very passionate about like any sort of like helping people do stuff easier.
Mhm.
And for example, like I think a lot of like work is mundane or a lot of work is repetitive, and people are not necessarily excited by doing it. Like
Mhm.
imagine like assembling a car on an assembly line. It's not that exciting. Uh, and I think very long term, we would have a society that people would do more like jobs that are fulfilling to them rather than like having to do a job just like to make money or just to like make the society work.
Mhm.
And I think doing anything towards that transition, as you said, like kind of like singularity, I think that's very exciting.
Mhm.
I'm also very curious, like where AI is going. Like, I mean, I don't think it's that close, like 2 years close, but definitely in like some finite future, we're gonna have like AIs that can think like us. And what would society look like then? How can we get there? And how can we like navigate it after that? I think those are very interesting. But shorter term, I'm very interested in like building tools that help people like do their job like faster or easier and remove like the repetitive parts. And like I built, for example, something a few weeks ago. Like it was like a so we connected ChatGPT to a browser, and you
Mhm.
could tell it to do tasks for you.
Mhm.
And like it would order a burger for you. It would register on a form for you. So I think those are very interesting. And it's kind of like it kind of feels alive when you have a computer that is doing stuff. So that's very exciting. Um, yeah.
It's great to chat with you over
Thank you.
here, and your passion is very contagious.
Thanks.
At the same time, I think people would like to know a little bit about what would you do if you want to relax, if you want to forget the computer science and coding for a while. What are your modes of relaxing and regenerating your energy?
Yeah.
Or you code all the time?
Yeah, not all the time. I mean, sometimes coding can be relaxing too, but like I think so. I really like exploring Bay Area. I mean, growing up in Tehran, like it's a very like urban area. Here, it's very fascinating to me that you drive like 30 minutes, then there's a forest or like there's like a
Yeah.
beach. And like one of my hobbies, I just crawl the streets. Like I was like, where does this road go? Let's go and find
Yeah.
it.
You get
Or like
lost in the
what?
city. You get
Yeah,
lost in the city.
yeah, like either walking or driving. That's very exciting. I like photography as an extension of this.
Yeah.
Like if you find something cool, capture it, and also like just spending time with friends and like things like that. Yeah.
Excellent. Very good. Um, we have a few minutes, and I would like to open the floor if you have any questions. Uh, Maybe we can have one or two questions, and there's a microphone. Anybody wants to ask our guest? Okay, we have a taker over here, Mohammed. Please introduce yourself and tell us where you work, so we know how to sue you. Is the mic on?
I think so.
We give a few seconds to. Why don't you say it louder?
Okay, sure.
Say it loud.
I'll try. So thank you, Saijan, and thank you, Islam. So my name is Mohammed. I'm a product manager, and as a fellow product manager, I'm sure you agree that the question of strategy is an important question for product managers.
Where do you work?
I work at France, and we work on a conversational AI tool for sales teams. What I'm curious about is to know about this question of strategy at those early stages of your company. Were those questions relevant for you at the time, and how would you approach answering these questions of what to build, when to build, what is the right time, what is the right component, and where were who were your sources? Was Stanford useful for you, or you had mentors at the time? So that is basically my question.
Yeah. So in terms of strategy, one general rule we had was like if you don't have to make a decision, you shouldn't make a decision. So like as long as the strategy is not limiting us? For example, let's say like there's this path and that path, and like, do they affect what I'm doing today or not? If they are, then we have to make a decision. If not, we would like push it back until like we have to make a decision. And that way, like you would also keep the doors open. And at Roblox, I kind of see that as well. Like you don't have to pick a horse in the, like as long as you don't have to pick a horse, don't pick a horse in the race. And but in terms of like mentors and like figuring out what's the right thing to do, yeah, we tried a lot. Like we had like, we talked a lot to our investors, like they had experience like building previous companies, and also like fellow founders. Like most founders, like they know the struggle of starting a company and they're willing to help. Like they have been in your shoes, so when you reach out to them, they're usually very helpful. And it's very interesting to see someone who's like 2 years ahead, 4 years ahead in the same journey, and how did they make their decisions. But generally, our main focus was, what do our customers want? Like, can we build that? And also like not doing something that's a dead end, as you said. Like we don't want to like build something that we can't see any way of like extending it to a very large company, but we wouldn't like worry too much about like what is it gonna exactly look like.
Any other question? There's one more. This is the last question. Can we get the mic to Mohammed Azawar? Like that. Is that Farshad? I can't tell from this one. Yeah, it is Farshad.
Thank you, Behzad and Saeed, for this great fireside chat. This is Farshad, and I'm a manager at NVIDIA. I work closely with our product team to build partnership with a lot of startups and build an ecosystem of partners that can use our software products in generative AI space. So as a result, I have a lot of exposure to a lot of startups and observing how they are, performing in this competitive market. So one thing I've observed is that especially early stage startups, sometimes they have some difficulties to find the right customer for themselves. Or, for example, there was an opportunity for a startup to, have discussions with, we have something at NVIDIA called MVenture that it invests in startup if it is the right opportunity. So my question is, how did you resolve these kind of problems to finding the right customers, or creating a moat around your product that other people cannot replicate it, so that the investor can trust more in your product? Thank you.
So we had beta users and early customers and things like that, but we didn't have a like paid contract, and like we didn't reach the sales like period. But I think generally the approaches I've seen is like sometimes like you cold outreach to customers, or like your investors connect you, like basically any way you can find to the company that you think is the right customer. But in terms of moats, I think there are these classic moats that you can build. Like one is network effect, the other one is like locking in. Like basically, I think there's this book, it's called 7 Powers. Have you heard of it? It's about like the different ways you can build a moat. And they define moat as something like, if you have this over time, like you will be more and more differentiated, and it will be harder for someone to start and compete with you. And I think a lot of those apply to generative AI as well. Happy to discuss it like after this. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
It was great chatting with you, Behzad Jan. On behalf of the Iranian community, Plug and Play, and myself, I would like to thank you for coming over here and answering these questions.
Thank you very much. Yeah, it's great talking to you.
سلام به همگی، ممنون که امشب اومدین. من یه لحظه اومدم کوتاه صحبت کنم که بگم که این کامیونیتی که ما داریم میسازیم فقط ما نیستیم که بسازیم، ما هدفمونه که همه بتونیم به هم کمک کنیم و این کامیونیتی پرژین ساخته بشه و بتونیم توی تک همگی به هم کمک کنیم. اگه فاوندرن دنبال کوفاوندر میگردن، اگه توی تکن آیدیایی دارن میخوام ببینن که چجوری پیچ کنن و به قول معروف اطلاعاتی در زمینه ونچر کپیتال بگیرن و بتونیم همگی به هم اینجا کمک کنیم. اگه افراد دنبال جاب میگردن، چه توی کمپانیای تک چه توی استارتاپ ها، همگی بتونیم اینجا کمک کنیم. پس لطفاً همگی با هم کمک بکنیم که بتونیم این کامیونیتی ساخته بشه. و اینکه اگر استارتاپ هستین، میخوایم پول ریز کنین، کمکی نیاز دارین، ما اینجا هستیم، من و احمد رضا. اگه سوالی دارین، کمکی میخواین، اگه برای ایونت های آینده فکر میکنین که کسی رو میشناسین یا خودتون، میتونین مثل امروز مثل بهزاد اینجا بشینین و به عنوان فایرساید چت باشین، به ما اطلاع بدین. یا اگه استارتاپی دارین که میخواین اینجا پیش کنین، you are more than welcome to come here. And that's it. I'm inviting to Paris to come on the stage and start the pitching the startup. Thank you.
Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Pardis. I'm the founder and CEO of WhichLister. Together at WhichLister, we design an app that simplifies wishlist management and turns it into a social and engaging experience. A platform that facilitates everyone to share their ideas. Beautiful. To share their ideas in a social and engaging way. So let's talk about the problem. Everybody loves to shop online and browse different websites. But sometimes online shoppers come across an item and it's not time for purchasing that item. So for online shoppers, keeping track of all items they are interested in is a hassle. Each e-commerce website has its own wish list, but it's really easy to forget about them. Plus, for having your wish list in those websites, you have to create an account in every single one of them. Most apps are a static list of boring items just for yourself, and they have no way to receive social feedbacks. Now let's get deeper. United States is the second largest market for e-commerce. In 2022, US e-commerce sales hit the record high of $1 trillion with an expectation of increase 18% in 2023. 80% of US populations are shopping online, and it's about $5,000 per user per year. And we believe with WhichLister, we can even make this experience easier for those users. Introducing WhichLister. WhichLister is more than creating a new list. It's a new habit that enables you to shop online in a social and interactive way. So now let's create a new list together. This is my profile, my WhichLister account. So I'm gonna click on plus button to start creating my new list. You can choose your category, the name of your list, and a little bit description of what your list is about. If you didn't come up with description, we will provide you with AI. So I'm gonna choose my picture. You can choose your picture from your library. You can choose our template based on the category you chose, and you can use our AI-generated image based on the information you already added in previous page. So I'm gonna click on AI and choose one of the pictures. At WhichLister, you can create 3 types of lists. You can have a personal, just for yourself, shared with your friends and family or whoever you like to, and make it public with everybody at WhichLister. So I'm gonna create public today. Boom, my list is created. You can either add item through our app or from our extension in browsers. I already saw this share. I really like it. So I'm going to click on share destination. I will choose WhichLister in my destination. We will get all of the information for you from the website, the pictures, name, and description. But if you like to change your name and description, you're more than welcome to. And I will click on my list. And you can filter based on the list you already created. By already filtered in public, and my latest list is on the top, so I'm going to click on it. And the item is on my list. So as I mentioned, WhichLister is a social media wishlist app. That means you can explore other people's public wish list and item and profile. You can follow your friends and family and whoever you want to get inspired from. And by following those people, you can get updated if they add new lists or if they add new item. We already launched our beta test, and we started our first round of our fundraising, hoping to release our app in Q4, right on time before holiday season. Our go-to-market strategy is focusing our inbound marketing through partnership with micro-influencer and marketing with different social media platforms like TikTok, Snapchat, and YouTube. We believe in our product, and we know if users start using our app and getting familiar with all the features, the possibilities are limitless. This is our team. We are really proud of what we achieved in such a short period of time, a very small and lean team. I don't want to bore you all with our fundraising details, but we are seeking for $500,000 to get our first 30,000 users. As I said, let's create a shopping experience that truly reflects your unique style and interest. This is our beta version. Everybody feel free to download our app and give us your feedback. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Pardesh John, for your great presentation. For the next presentation, I'm inviting Reza from Hive to present his great idea for transportation, trucking transportation.
This is towards the end of the presentation. Oh, you guys got to see a glimpse of it. All right, so I came to you all the way from the great state of North Carolina. I was not planned to present tonight, but in North Carolina, it's very rare to get to see this many Iranians under one roof, so I had to take the chance. I'm here to tell you about Hive. It's a product we've been working on for about 3 years. It's a software and supply chain, and before I get into what it does, I want to tell you and kind of teach you a little bit about how supply chain work in today's world. So if Sean as a manufacturer wants to ship a few pallets to a distributor or a customer, he has a few options. He can go a FTL or a full truckload route, which are those semi-trucks you see on the highway. He can go LTL, which are companies that basically rent a portion of the truck and you ship it to warehouses, or he can go expedite, which is what we do at Hive, and it is a direct path on the smallest possible vehicle to get that shipment over. To put some names to those categories and some startups that are disrupting those sectors, you know, there are companies like Werner and Schneider in FTL world. There are companies like FedEx and Old Dominion in LTL. And then most of the ones in expedite you probably have never heard of, even though they are kind of the secondary or backbone of what ends up happening outside of FTL and LTL. So if Sean wanted to ship those pallets, he had a couple of options. He can hire his own fleet of drivers and trucks, or he can handle it with a third-party logistics provider. Let's say he gives it to Bob and he talks and negotiates on the price. Bob then puts it usually on a load board, which is a company that propagates that information to other carriers, and these companies end up getting the loads through emails or apps or other forms, and usually the one that responds in the quickest time with the cheapest price ends up being awarded that load. So companies or trucks that are outside of that network usually end up being left out. And another thing that happens that's usually even worse is sometimes another broker gets that load from a load board, changes a little bit of the information about it, maybe a zip code or some dimension or weight, and reposts it on the network again. This is called double brokering. It's a pretty significant problem in supply chain. Some poor truck driver ends up getting this at even a lower price, and then it goes back to the shipper, and as you can see, the brokers are the one making the majority of the money without even leaving their office. So the problem that we really want to solve is the fact that shippers usually pay 10 to 40% more on every load, and that includes everything that you guys buy at the store. On their shipments, they have no visibility directly to those drivers that are moving the loads, and they don't even get to utilize the entire network. Brokers obviously introduce points of failure into the system and are charging a lot for very little value that they provide. And drivers have no direct shipper access. They are hurt by double brokering, and we really think there's a better way. So the very first thing we did was where the current load hive is and what our current product is a dispatch automation and load management system for small to medium-sized carriers. So 15 or more trucks. They're usually doing a couple $1 million a month of, or a couple $1 million a year of loads. And what we do is we created this white label solution where all of their trucks get their own custom label app, and all of their drivers and dispatchers get a website that they can interact with those drivers. And the system is automatically sending the loads to the right drivers, and they're booking the loads much more efficiently and faster. So we started with maybe about 130 daily active drivers back in early 2022, and now we are close to 2,100 daily active and about 7,000 total drivers in our network. We've already become one of the largest network of expediting in the US and Canada. Our company grew significantly, thankfully, to the adoption, even though we have only 12 actual customers right now, but those customers are growing internally. And our plan is to create another app, which is called the Solo app, for smaller carrier companies, and then eventually disintermediate brokers from the whole picture. That's going to be a harder part, but there's about 95% of the companies in trucking that are smaller than the one we currently serve. So the market is massive. These companies get on the order of 10 to 12,000 emails a day. Imagine if you think you have too many emails. And about 25% of emails are actually from load boards. The rest of them are private load boards. On average, about $600 a load. So that's about an $8 billion market. Top down, it's also a big market, even though expediting is a very small sliver in trucking and US transportation. But we have much bigger plans for this. Not only we want to create this core load matching product that helps carriers and trucking companies be more efficient, but we think there's opportunities for factoring, for insurance, for fuel cards, for partnerships with TMS providers and shippers and carriers, and eventually to go international or to explore other trucking sectors. So competition-wise, what's odd about trucking and freight is there's very little tech talent actually focusing on it, but there's a huge amount of value. Everything in this room has been on a truck at some point. And our competition typically are one of two kinds. Either they're negatively performing but massively funded mega care companies like Uber Freight or Convoy, or there are very poorly made web apps that really can't function the way they were hoping. So our goal is that Sean is going to have a third option at his disposal if you're successful. He's going to be able to use Load Hive shipping portal himself with no broker. He's going to post his load. Our system is going to be able to identify which truck near the vicinity with the matching from those drivers. He can pick the bid based on price, proximity, distance, and other factors. And then the system is going to track that load all the way to delivery, and Sean is going to have real-time visibility into that system. Here's our team. We are a team of 4 developers. We started about 8 years ago now, working on software development and consulting in North Carolina and then New Orleans for a bit. And that's Load Hive. Thank you.
Thank you, Reza. If you have any question from Reza about his team, about what he's doing, he's here.
One thing that Behzad was saying is about networking in Silicon Valley. Again, it was my first time after 12 years of being in the US. I went to Apple and Google campuses, and all I saw was locked doors. So I would love to connect with you guys so that next time I'm here, I can get some guest passes. But yes.
Hey, Reza, thank you for your great
Absolutely.
presentation. So I was wondering, are you guys planning to eventually go to, for example, if like a single person has a truck and they want to do these, are they able to? So then they're not going with a trucking company. So kind of like an Uber, but for trucks.
Exactly. Yeah, you got it. So the value really comes the larger the network gets. So if a single truck driver is able to join our network and get access to all of the shippers that are able to post loads on us, that's when we have really provided them value. So yes, that's the ultimate vision. But to get there, we always operated profitably. We never raised money for this company. So we had to start with a smaller or slightly larger companies who are able to pay us. And now we are expanding into that solo app, which is going to be able to provide that to smaller carriers.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Reza. Sorry, I forgot to add. Sorry.
Come here. Well, what are you doing in North Carolina, man? Come on.
That's the sentence I've been hearing a lot. I'm trying. I got to wait for my leave.
Right. Have you thought of verticals? Like, for example, I was thinking like shipping cars, like working with Carvana and those kind of verticals rather than just ship anything, anywhere.
So technically we are in a vertical, and that's expedited. So you're correct. There are specific verticals like car transportation, bulk loads, which are like grains or unusually shaped products, things like that. But typically what we saw during our early research was at least there's some solution for most verticals that we looked at, but expediting was completely neglected, and the ones that were there were very poorly implemented. So we were able to grow as quickly as we did because we were the first one who brought real good tech in that. But to your point, I mean, the same technology can apply to different verticals. We built in a truck agnostic way, so any company can define their own truck types and it still gets the benefit of the load matching and the network. So yeah, that's the vision. Is once we perfect the product and know that it's really working fine, then we're going to expand it into other verticals.
I used to work in NetApp in North Carolina,
Uh-huh.
so that's I'm saying it from the heart. Come here.
Thank you. I will. Thank you.
Thank you. Hardis.
Okay, that was really on point. I forgot to ask you guys if you have any question from me. So, a question? Sure.
And I'm actually interested if you, both of you can quickly answer this question. So I'm interested in knowing the backstory of your products, what is the story behind it, or was the pain point close to your world, and where this all originated from?
Would you like to go first? About the backstory?
You can go ahead.
Okay. This one is actually interesting and a bit unique, I guess, from a perspective of someone who, as far as I have understood how companies start here in the Valley, this is different. So as I said, we had a consulting company first, and a customer came to us, said, I have this problem, let me show you. And he opened his laptop and he was getting one email every second. And he said, every one of these emails is a load. I said, well, okay. It says it's somewhere in the country, point A to point B. I have to open the email, go to Google Maps, find out where it is. Do I have a driver near that area? Text my driver, talk to him, then go back, reply to that email, wait for someone to get back to me. And then by the time I do that, I've received 200 other emails. I can't take a bathroom break without losing money. And I said, okay, well, do you have like $400,000 for us to build you something? He's like, no, I have no money, but I think this is a really good product. I've been a truck driver before. I really need you to help me. So long story short, we ended up doing a revenue share deal with this customer and said, okay, we'll build it for you. You use it, you pay us as you use it until you've paid us X multiple of that cost, and then you can have it. And the deal was, I kind of want to go back to building good products here. The deal was that if he had at some point broken that relationship, we would keep the IP and he would be out on his own. So he did. To our surprise, he came one day and said, one of my partners is having an issue. I have to dissolve my company and I can't do it. And I sent him an email and I said, look, according to our agreement, if you do that, then this is all ours. Now, keep in mind, we are a software company with zero background in trucking and logistics. We were like, what are we going to do with this product? So he did. He broke it off. And a few weeks later, he came back and said, I want to go back to this deal. And I want to be exclusive. I want to be the only one that you give this to, because his partner was also trying to get it from us. So we said, okay, fine. We'll work with you. We'll give you the deal. But you got to keep growing as quickly as possible, because we don't want to be your salesperson. We just built you one product, and it's your own destiny to make. So he took that, worked on it for a while, grew his company, almost 10x'd his revenue. He was making 20 grand a month. And then he cut it off and cut off one of his top producing dispatchers and contacted us and says, you guys work for me. This is my app. You should build me this feature and that feature. And we said, wait a minute, you haven't paid for this yet, and you're claiming ownership. So we ended up suing our very first customer to protect our IP. It gets better. It gets better. So we sued him saying that, look, you can pay, own it, or you can continue to pay it, but it's not going to work like this for you to claim ownership. And after about a year of spending every bit of money that he had paid us up to that point on the lawsuit, he came back, agreed to the settlement of a 20% price increase, non-exclusivity, and to this day, he's still a customer that pays before everybody else. So you have a really good, solid, sticky product if you can sue your customers and they remain a customer for you. And in the meantime, we learned a lot about trucking. So.
I don't know. Oh, okay. This worked. So for us, we are pretty new. We just released our beta testing, so we don't have that much story. But if I want to come up with the story, how we started this idea was, we always had this problem. But I want to go shopping. That was so many options that I wanted to choose or buy some days, but it's not the time. So I had to keep all of my browsers on for one day. Maybe I'll come back and buy them. Also, it happens for me a lot, not just for shopping. My friends, my family, they went to the trip, for example, in Italy. I loved everything they have done there. The hotel they booked, the car they rent, the outfit, the restaurant, anything. And I wanted to do the same. But you have to go keep asking of those people, where did you go? Where did you book? Where was that hotel? So it was really good idea to have a list to add all of those items in same place. You want to keep it you can keep it for yourself, or you can keep it publicly for free. No need to change your account. Maybe someone's browsing and looking for it, and they can easily book and have the experience you already had. It was actually really interesting. Nobody asked me, what's your difference with Pinterest, which is really good. That means nobody used Pinterest, or, they didn't really listen to my pitch. But if users start using our app, they can see we are really different with Pinterest. Pinterest right now is just, a website full of random pictures, and they were never able to control them. You don't see any influencers or celebrities start using Pinterest as some platform to influence their users. But at WhichLister is not just adding item or link. It's a new hobby to shop or browse to see like what other people does that I might want to do at the same time. It's really easy access link to just jump to the website and experience it. For example, I go to Instagram and I'm the new users, I'm a new follower for some influencers. And I see a picture from 6 months ago. So they probably tag the brands, but I have to go to the brands, go to the website, go for a skirt or shoes, whatever, try to find, finally I will get bored or tired and forget about it. But if they just easily say, you can find the whole outfit in my fall outfit wish list, so I can easily go to their wish list. At the same time, I can follow them with the update, but it's super easy for me to choose those items and just shop really easy. And yeah, any other question? Perfect.
Thank you, Reza, and thank you, Persian. The next presentation is virtual presentation. Mehdi, he's CEO and founder of SciToDate. He will tell you his journey in SciToDate, but he's from Netherlands, and he sent us a video, but he's online. If you have any question, I can ask him.
خواستم از شرکت سایتودیت براتون بگم. از اینجا به بعدش رو به انگلیسی میگم چون همه راحت تریم احتمالاً. So, I want to tell you how we have an end-to-end solution to accelerate developing new technologies and commercializing it. What do I mean with that? Normally, when we talk about innovation and R&D, we think of a paradise and a separate world of commercialization, which is a hell. These two worlds are separated. These two worlds, especially in the deep tech, work completely different, and they have different types of information and access to different types of knowledge. However, if you want to have a very good, successful company and a product, these two need to be two sides of the coin. One identifies the need and builds, and the other one identifies who needs it and delivers it to that person. So we need to be able to essentially work together. However, this is very hard. With the most advanced technologies in the world that are fueling our growth across different technologies, this is hard because the product needs to be developed, the R&D is very expensive and lengthy, and also the commercialization also has its own challenges. But we want to essentially put them all based on same access to the same knowledge, and we call that the most detailed map of science and technology. We want to give them access to the map of their world and give them, open different windows for them so they can ask the relevant question that matters to them. Especially 7 questions we're going to focus on. What to make, how to make it, can we make it? Because if it's protected, we cannot make it because of intellectual property. What is the best market to go after? What are the key clients? Who are their decision makers? And why should they have my product? These are the type of questions that across the product line timeline, we need to be able to answer as much detail as we want. As of now, we have more than 45 clients in the deep tech world, big ones, small ones, scale-ups, a few very big names, but also we have a lot more clients to gain, around 500,000 clients that we identified using our own map. So let me give you a real world example on this. A client based in the US, they have more than $5 billion per year revenue. They are in many different industries, including microscopy. Their microscopes cost around 3 million. Very capable, has many different application areas across different fields, aging research or oncology and such. And when you have a product that is so capable and has so many fragmented market applications, then it's a disaster coming. And that is losing big market opportunities. And that is exactly what happened when they realized using SciToDate that they were missing soil research market because of all the environmental studies, microplastics and such. These are very heavily funded across industries. And they were missing on that. And last year they started an initiative to focus and sell this product to them. And because now they exactly know this product is for soil research, who are the top clients, what are their needs, and how can we address them, they can run a marketing campaign that does wonders, has 15 times the actual, more than 15 times the conversion. From 2%, their conversion goes to up to 35%. And this is unheard of because now they exactly are talking to the right person in the right way. And then when they pass on those marketing leads to sales, sales can talk to them with all that insights that they have about the customer, the market, and the product. And they can generate as much as 3 times the opportunities and close it much faster. And we see this across our clients. We have a team of 15 people. We're going to have soon some colleagues in the US as well. Myself, I'm a researcher by background in theoretical quantum physics. My colleague is a researcher in, like Yon, my co-founder and CTO, is a researcher in deep learning and data engineering. Amaury is the one who knocked on all the doors of those 45 clients and more to get them. Very active sales, very aggressive we are. And my colleague, Puya, co-founder and CTO of CBAP, the application in Iran on the iPhone App Store. He's our head of product. So let me show you another cool thing. This is another window to that map of science and technology. It's used for R&Ds and across also different industries, scientists, technology scouts, or innovation officers. I'm showing in this example, what are the, like asking a question, what are the different coatings that are used inside new batteries? Do a paper search in the research articles. And it just goes and searches, it finds titanium dioxide and different ways and different of them based on the sources that we have here. And you see here, it actually references the sources. This does not only searches papers and references papers, but also it can reference patents and such. He say here, if I use of those coatings in batteries are patented. And yes, they are patented. So it prohibits me to do that. If I'm in the innovation department, it's very good to know these. I can also ask follow-up question to give me more of those patents. In a second, I will show it to you right now. So I ask it, give me more patents. And it's doing that and going again to the US Patent Office and seeing what patents it has. And we are actually training this and tuning it to create our own model. So now I can ask even more follow-up questions. So I did papers, patents, and now I can ask even more follow-up questions. Let me just go ahead a bit. So I asked what funded projects they are. It comes up with the different funded projects. in coating in batteries, in that specific coating. And then I can actually see who are those who have the patents, who are those the companies that have patents if I want to sell them something, and that are patenting those coating if I want to sell those coating for their battery and such. And it just comes up with it. Let me show you. This is the companies, 1,500 companies in the coating. I can show you also, these are the researchers that are working in that, if you want to sell them something or hire them for a certain area. And this is people that are doing different grants. Have a great evening. Talk to you soon. Hopefully see you soon.
Thank you, anyone. Thank you. Thanks for being here tonight. Please help yourself and hoping to see you next time on July 11th. So if you have any question, if you need any help, we are here to help, and please let us know if I can do anything for you.
Thank you. And for the future events and the future announcement, please follow our LinkedIn page. So, and also you can find us in YouTube and LinkedIn, Persian Tech Network. Thank you and have a great night.
Thank you so much.
See you
Have a good one.